I can't help but say I've been blessed, you know. I mean, it seems like every break that came along was good for me, you know. So, I just thank the Lord for my whole life. Well, I was in high school in West Palm Beach, and it was the Korean War had started, and they were drafting people back then, and but as long as you were in school, you were in pretty good. So I was in high school at the time, and I got out of high school, and either in high school or the first or second year in junior college, which was there in West Palm Beach, I joined the Naval Reserve. So just because maybe I just wanted something else to do, you know. So they met every Monday night at Riviera Beach, which is just above West Palm Beach. And I would go up there Monday night. I had my little sailor uniform and everything, you know, my little white uniform and little cap and everything, you know. So, and I was a sailor. So come the summertime, I had to go on some kind of cruise. So I selected to go on the Panama cruise. And we were put on a destroyer escort. It's a small destroyer. And out of Pensacola, and it was an old ship, but it was a Navy vessel. And we weren't assigned anything other than just chipping paint and painting that ship, you know, because we didn't know anything. We didn't know too much about the Navy, but we were doing what we were told, you know. So we went to Panama on a 2-week cruise, and it was just wonderful, you know, a nice, slick Gulf, you know. And we got down there, and we went to Panama, we went to Cristobal, and, you know, some of the other places around Panama. And we got back on that ship, and we kept pulled out of harbor heading back up to Pensacola. And we hit a storm. Well, we didn't know what a storm was like in the Gulf. Well, everybody on the ship, even the regular crew that was used to all the time, and we were just reservists, you know, chipping paint, and everybody was sick. I mean, everybody. Well, this friend of mine, he says, I understand if you stay busy, you won't get sick. And so we sat against the bulkhead and we chipped paint for 2 or 3 hours, and we got used to the ship rolling and pitching and everything, and we didn't get sick. I think we too were the only ones in the whole ship that didn't get sick. Oh. Well, we got back to Panama, to Pensacola, and we went back to West Palm Beach, and I was still in the reserve unit there. Well, somewhere along the line, when I went to junior college, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I stopped going to meetings. I just stopped, you know. I didn't quit, I just stopped. And so I went to the University of Florida, and at the University of Florida, on most big institutions, they had ROTC. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were a junior or above, you couldn't take it because it was a 4-year deal. And when you got out of University of Florida or most other universities, you were commissioned as a second lieutenant. You know, well, I didn't have that opportunity, so I wasn't going to Naval Reserve meetings anymore. And frankly, I just forgot about the Navy. And I finished up.
They didn't forget about you, I bet.
I finished up, and I went down. I said, well, I'm going to get drafted. And I would have been. So I said, I wasn't going to be drafted in the Army. So I said, I don't want to get in the Air Force because it was a 4-year deal. And I didn't want to stay in the Navy. So, well, I did take a Navy test. They come around as a team to seniors, and they give this test. Well, I never heard from the test. I mean, you know, I was a senior graduating the next month. I expected to hear from them. I didn't hear that. I said, well, I must have flunked the test. So I decided I would just join the Marine Corps as a private and go to boot camp. And so I went to the recruit sergeant there at Gainesville, and I told him that I was just getting ready to graduate. And he said, boy, we We need people like you in the Marine Corps. And he gave all this sales talk, you know. He would get credit for signing people up, you know. So it was almost like a high pressure salesman.
Oh yeah.
And I said, I got wet feet. I said, you know, I can sign up down in West Palm Beach after I graduate just as easy as I could do here, even though I knew the draft board was going to pick me up pretty quick, you know, within a week. So I told the guy, I said, look, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll come back tomorrow. Well, I didn't go back. So I go down to West Palm Beach, and I go to the post office, and the Marine sergeant was there, recruit sergeant, and I got to talking to him, and he was real nice. And the more I talked to him, the more he asked me questions. He says, have you been to college? I said, I just graduated from University of Florida. He says, well, look, I don't know much about this program, but there's a program in the Marine Corps that we need to look into for you. And I said, well, what I do? He said, well, I know a captain in Atlanta that's head of the recruit for the 6th Marine Division area. And he said, you can get more information out of him. So I said, put him on the phone. So I got on the phone and talked to the man. His name was O'Donnell, Captain O'Donnell. He says, he asked me, had I graduated? I said, yes, I had. And he says, I'd like for you to come to Atlanta to sign up for this OCS program.
Yeah.
They called it OCC in the Marine Corps, OCS in the Army. It was Officers Training Course.
Yeah.
Candidate course.
Yeah.
And so he says, you'll go in the 5th school at Quantico, Virginia. And he asked him some more questions. And he says, I know your track career and everything. You're in good shape. No use in even taking a physical. I said, well, yeah, I'm probably in the best shape I've ever been. He says, we'll just forego that. And he says, I'll send you some papers about going to Atlanta. Well, I turned around to leave, and he says, oh, there's one more question. I said, what's that? He said, have you ever been in any other branch of the service? Well, I thought a minute, you know. I said, no, I hadn't. And the more I thought about it, I said, I wonder if Naval Reserve would count. And I said, I was in the Naval Reserve at one time. He looked at me, he said, one time? He said, did you get a discharge, an honorable discharge? I said, no, I don't know anything about a discharge. He said, you're still in the Navy. I said, oh my God. He said, we got to go to Charleston, go to the Navy Department, get your records, get them out, get you out of the Navy, and get you able to sign up in the Marine Corps. I said, well, look, do what you can do, but the draft board is going to draft me just as soon as I get home. He said, I'll take care of that. He wrote a letter to the draft board for me to give to them, and I did, and that satisfied them.
Yeah.
But they said, if you don't get in the Marine Corps, we're going to pick you up in a couple months. I was like, so a week went by, and he sent me, I had to go in the 6th OCC program because I missed the 5th one because it was picked up in May, and I had to go in September. So I was at home for 3 months, you know, doing working. So finally I got orders to go to Quantico for the 6th. So I was in the Marine Corps. The officers program was exactly like boot camp. We were nothing but privates, you know, in the Marine Corps. And we did exactly the same thing they did at Paris Island on boots. We were treated like dirt, you know. And so it was only for 90 days. 90 days, I got a commission. I went home for 10 days, and I was reassigned back to Quantico for officers training for 5 months. And so that would have really qualified me then, you know. So I was at home, and I got and I had my second lieutenant bar. You know, I was an officer.
Yeah.
And I got a department from the Navy, a big package like that. And they ordered me to go to Rhode Island, Plymouth, Rhode Island, I think where their school was, to go in the naval school. And it would have been a 5-year program. But I wouldn't have been in school 5 years. It was sort of like a 90-day deal.
So did
and
they
then
not know you were in the Marine
I would
Corps
be
then
an
at that
ensign
point?
in the Navy. So I said, well, this is real funny because they don't even know what's going on in the Navy Department. So I sealed it back up and I wrote a little note in there and I said, I appreciate your concern, but I can't accept your offer at this time. And I signed it, W.F. Wood, 2nd Lieutenant, U.S. Marine Corps. I don't know what happened. I never heard from him again. See?
Yeah.
Okay, I go back up to Quantico. I do my 5 months officers training, and I was married by then to Dot, and we were signed to go to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, for my first duty station. Well, Camp Lejeune is a big place, you know. Well, I got into Amtrak.
Amphibious.
And I went through all the Korean War, you might say, going back and forth to Villegas, Puerto Rico, and that was just about all I did, you know. I stayed in the Navy part of the Marine Corps more than I stayed in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But I had amphibian tractors. I had a platoon of them on Onslow Beach, and we practiced everything that Amtrak's did as far as delivering people to the beach, to supplies and all that, you know. Well, I got out in 2 years as a first lieutenant because I was in the grade the required time. I think it was 2 years, and I had just been a first lieutenant for probably 6 months when I got out. Well, I got out, and we took a job with John Estes down in Milton, Florida, as a forester. And within the first month or two that we were living in Milton, I got a letter from the Marine Corps ordering me to go to the recruit station at Pensacola to become a temporary captain in the Marine Corps. Well, I said, why am I getting to be a captain and I hadn't been in the Marine Corps active but 2 years? That's unheard of, you know. So I said, well, why not? I'm going to Pensacola. So I went to Pensacola and I've got the certificate up there that I am a captain. But I never wore the uniform because I was out. I didn't need to. But if I had to go back in, I would go back in as a captain, which was a good deal. I didn't understand that really.
So you did or didn't go back in then?
Oh, I didn't go back in.
Okay.
But the Korean War was going on still pretty. But the last big push that they took for Korea, I was at Camp Lejeune and I wasn't selected to go. I guess because some people have to stay.
Yeah.
Some people go, some people stay. I think about half my company went. Well, anyway, I got out and I was a civilian again. And I had that certificate and it's on the wall up there. And one day, my pastor was a retired colonel in the Army. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Army. It was a chaplain. And he was sitting up there in the den when we were talking, and he was asking me about my Marine Corps, and I said, yeah, that's my certificate I got as a captain, and I was only in 2 years. He looked at me and he says, really? And I said, yeah. And he thought a minute, and about a month after that, he came over again and he said, you know, I've been thinking about your situation. He said, you were in the Navy, you told me, and you don't know it, but you got 6 years service in the Naval Reserve. That counts just like active duty. So I had 2 years in the Marine Corps. I had 8 years, which would have qualified me to be captain. And that's what they were going on. They were going on that record that was in the Navy.
You forgot about that naval service count towards that,
And I was getting what they call longevity. That's extra pay for service. I was getting longevity, and it was always in my paycheck as LOG or something like that. It was probably $10, $15 extra every month, and I got it the whole time I was in. That was for my time in the total time in the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Well, it probably
and I didn't
helped.
know what that longevity was for.
It probably helped that you were, it's wartime.
They